The sea does not shout when it kills. It takes its time, hides its teeth in fog, and waits for a single human mistake. In June of 1896, the Castle Line steamer Drummond Castle left South Africa on the long homeward run toward England. Passengers paced the decks while stewards hurried through the hum of engines. As the miles fell away and spring became a northern summer, the air cooled and thickened, and the familiar road narrowed toward the English Channel. By the time she reached the approaches, the sky and sea had folded together into a woolly gray that erased the horizon and made every judgment uncertain. Every mariner knows the name Ushant. French sailors call it Ouessant, a granite sentinel at the corner of Brittany, where the Atlantic squeezes into the Channel and the tides run like hounds. The safer road lies to the north of the island, with room for error and water under the keel. The southern side is a shoal-spiked maze of reefs and eddies, Molene and the islets scattered around it, its channels braided with hidden teeth, its few lights drowned or doubled by fog. The Drummond Castle pressed on with caution. On the bridge, officers listened for bells and horns. In the bows, the leadsman called depths into the gray. Below, the engine room answered each telegraph order with obedient throb and hiss. Somewhere ahead, beyond the wet white, Ouessant's light should have stood out like a star if the watch could see it. Somewhere beneath, the tide, at its own inscrutable angle, shouldered the hull. Little by little, the sea rearranged the problem, a knot of current here, a degree of drift there, a lane of water that felt open, felt safe, felt right. It was late. Passengers were asleep or pretending to be, blankets pulled to their chins against the damp that creeps everywhere at sea. In the second-class saloon, a lamp burned low, its glass haloed by moisture that wormed in through ventilators. A steward paused in a companionway to listen, the screw beating steadily, the pumps ticking like clocks, the kind of shipboard music that means order. On deck, oilskins shone like the hides of seals. Voices were small things, crushed down by the weather. Then the bottom rose to meet her. There was no prelude. A tremor ran through the plates, then a jolt like a hammer blow. Iron barked, crockery leapt and smashed in the galleys. A passenger sitting up to cough felt the mattress heave as though the ship had inhaled sharply. In the engine room, gauges shuddered, needles ran wild, and a stoker's shovel clanged out of his hands. The Drummond Castle had struck rock. On a good night, a sound ship can survive one wound. On a night like this, among reefs that come in files and ranks, the first strike only turns the wheel of fate. The hull, already bleeding, scraped again. Rivets screamed. A seam opened somewhere no lantern could reach. Water, the oldest saboteur, arrived everywhere at once, a hiss behind a bulkhead, a cold ankle-deep surprise in the passageway, a black fist in the stokehold that beat the fire from the furnaces. Lamps dimmed and steadied and dimmed again, as if the ship were trying to breathe. Orders flew. Close the doors, rouse the passengers, clear the boats. But human speed and ship's speed part company when steel is holed. Officers ran to stations with their mouths already open to shout. The bosun's pipe shrilled. A woman in a nightdress found the ladder slick under her feet and could not understand the angle of the corridor. Her world had been level a minute before. Somewhere below, a man wedged in a companionway tried to haul someone after him and failed. The deck canted. The sea had hold of the ship from beneath, from within, from everywhere at once. Lifeboat drill is for daylight. The davits creaked, swung, searched for a vertical that no longer existed. A boat went half in, half out, battered like a tin between hull and sea. Another slid down true, touched water obediently, and then vanished in the dark as if the ocean had closed over a candle. Passenger lists, muster rolls, all the liturgies of safety, fell apart in the roar. Someone had a child in their arms and then did not. Someone clutched a rosary until the beads bruised the skin and still could not make the sea return what it had taken. What the sea took, it took quickly. In minutes, the Drummond Castle slipped from ship to hulk to carcass, then to a burst of bubbles and a scatter of lifebelts. A few found themselves in the water. 3, it would be said later, survived, and felt the shock of it like a second, colder blow. The fog, partner to disaster, wrapped the cries and returned only its own wet silence. Pieces of deck furniture drifted. A clock floated face up and kept the wrong time. Far off, somewhere beyond the white, a bell tolled as if for a service no one could attend. Dawn, gray and reluctant, revealed what the night had made. The tide had carried wreckage and bodies into the narrow ways around Molène, where fishermen rowed out in heavy boats. They knew those channels the way a shepherd knows his flock, and they went softly, as if the sea itself were still listening. They lifted the living first, what few there were, then the dead, covering faces when they could, speaking little. In the island churches the bells rang, in cottages the women prepared shrouds for strangers. No one asked for thanks. They did what the sea requires of those it spares. Telegrams ran ahead of the truth. A liner lost off Ushant, a terrible number drowned, only 3 souls saved. In ports and parishes, names were read aloud and not answered. Newspapers filled their columns with careful type and questions about routes, soundings, bearings, the brutal arithmetic of an inquiry that cannot raise the dead. In time there would be hearings, charts on easels, a pointer tapping the place where prudence should have turned north. There would be interviews with survivors whose words came in broken knots, the jolt, the darkness, the pull downward, the cold that bit like iron. What remains, a century and more later, are fragments. A brass plate on a chapel wall, a paragraph in a company ledger in a library no one visits on fair weather days, an island graveyard with foreign names chiseled carefully by hands that spoke another language. Above all, a story retold in any harbor where fog is more than weather. The night a ship, sound enough and steered by men who meant to do right, trusted the sea to forgive a small error, and learned that it does not forgive at all. There is a superstition among sailors that the ocean has memory. If so, it keeps the Drummond Castle near Ushant, in that white room between tides, where a bell rings without owner, and a lamp glows faintly in the mind long after it is doused. It remembers the throb of an engine running fine, until it didn't, the shock that ran through iron and bone together, the brief, hard labor of boats that never reached clean water. It remembers 3 faces in the gray and a multitude more who sank without telling their names. It remembers fog that made sound lie and light fail, and the precise moment when everything went from problem to doom. Stand on a cliff above a channel and listen. You might hear what the crew could not in time, a bell out of place, a tide out of patience, a warning swallowed by weather. And if you cannot, remember anyway. For ships are not only machines and weights of cargo, they are the sum of hands and hopes aboard them. When they go down, the loss is counted in more than tonnage. It is measured in rooms that never hear a footstep again, in letters that stop arriving, in an empty chair that waits by habit for someone who will not come home. This is the entry the sea wrote for the Sunken ledger that night, fog thick as wool, Ushant to the north, Molène and its reefs to the south, one steamer confident, then wounded, then gone, passengers asleep and rudely awakened into cold water, 3 saved, the rest surrendered to the deep. Cause, call it drift, or error, or the slow conspiracy of small mistakes. Result, silence. And silence, when the ocean keeps it, is the loudest thing a sailor knows. Thank you for listening to The Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.